Well, one of the big pushes um, is going to be open banking
Hmm.
because this year in 2023, and I believe in the fall is when we'll finally get read-only access. So it's a step towards having open banking, and
Hmm.
that will have an impact on obviously the entire financial industry.
Yep.
Um, what are your thoughts on open banking, and do you feel that the industry is adequately prepared, or what needs to be done to get to that phase? At least for
Yeah.
the initial process.
Yeah, for sure. I think most of the financial institutions we deal with have been investing in open banking at some level for quite some time, but it's been around the edges. It's not in the core of their business, and I think for most of the senior executives, they're not really even aware of the implications of it. Um, what we see in Europe is that they've gone ahead and forced in open banking through top-down regulation. Um, and it's allowed the financial institutions to rethink their business model in some ways, right? So they can decide what kind of organization they want to be. Um, and you can imagine a situation where a bank is providing underlying banking services to multiple different other financial institutions who are operating as distributors only. So that kind of rethink hasn't happened here at all yet. There are people who are imagining that future and starting to prepare for it, I think. Um, but they don't, we don't yet have the tooling in place to make it happen because the regulation hasn't forced the institutions to make change. So I think this fall will be a big shift for us. And as we get into even broader open banking, um, here you're going to see that the industry is going to have to react and make decisions about what's the role of each of the financial institutions that are playing in it. Um, it's an interesting topic because really it comes down to data and ownership of data, right? And the concept here is that the client owns their data. And they have the right to have their data shared with who they want to have it shared with, and they have the right to take that access away at any time as well. So, managing that is not so easy for an industry that doesn't have all of that data connected between different points. And so, there are organizations like FDX who've been there to help prepare all these firms with a set of standards that they can use for sharing the data. I think most of the financial institutions have spent money investing, building APIs to make that happen, but they don't have them really connected into the life breath of their organizations yet. And there's a very major set of work to be done, first off, to conceptualize how you're going to use it, and then to actually implement it. So.
Right. Well, it's really interesting because in Canada, we are fortunate in the sense that we are able to learn from the lessons of other nations, such
Mhm.
as Australia, Europe.
Yep.
They've introduced it much more quickly than we did, so we have that to our advantage. But at the same time, of course, there's gonna be pain points and hurdles that we have to get through ourselves.
Yeah.
And when it comes to tooling, do you feel that we have the correct tools? Because I would think that, again, perhaps because this has already been in existence in other places, we'd be able to get similar tools to them, or even uh, get the tools from cross borders. I don't think everything has to be built in-house in Canada, as long as there's proper compliance
Yeah.
and regulation behind it.
So this is for open banking generally, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm not, I mean, fundamentally, open banking is about sharing data
right.
and giving people the choice to share it and unshare it, and being able to prove that you've given them that choice, right? So um, I'm not sure that that's so much about. Um, I'm not sure it's so much about tooling because I think the technology to do it is not complicated, honestly, and we have standards that we share, and we share them across North America. By the way, so when I talk about FDX, it's a North American organization. So I think really it's about defining what you want to do with that capability is the more important question, the more difficult question. How are we going to implement it?
Right.
And it's not just about giving clients data access. It's about, okay, well, how are we going to take advantage of that? What's that going to mean for us? Can a fintech now provide banking services and do it in a way that's that's disruptive to our business? And the answer is yes, they can. And then, okay, well, how are you going to respond to that as a financial institution? And what's your role in that?
Right.
So those are big questions for an organization that's run in a fairly consistent way for a very long time, right? So
It's
yeah.
true. I mean, one of the things about at least the wealth industry in Canada is that we're very slow to change. It takes a while. So, but I feel like that's changed as we become more digital. They've had no choice but to adopt, and so now there's more accelerated changes. And as far as open banking goes, again, it's something that clients are going to demand. Like if one firm can do something and they know they can do it, then they're going to ask why their firm can't do it. So it'll sort of be kind of like a dominoes effect where once one goes down, the rest are going to have to follow as well.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think what we've seen in Europe is that most firms have made decisions about how to make sure that they are providing a set of capabilities to their clients that allows them to conform to the regulations, but also take advantage of the opportunity. And there are lots of interesting, I would call them, sort of groups of firms who have come together to offer specific sets of services. So for example, there's a financial institution that just does loans, and another one that just does deposit taking and checking accounts, and they have a third organization that delivers that service to a client as if it's one financial institution. But the reality is underlying there are multiple institutions delivering the service. We've seen that in the wealth business for a long time. We've always had correspondent clearing, and in the U.S. market especially, we have sort of RIAs who are supported by the turnkey asset managers, the TAMP type services, and with multiple custodians like Schwab and Fidelity and others. So I think for the wealth industry, we've already had to deal with these challenges. For the banking industry, this is new and will be, I think, tougher change. So, in a way, it's kind of it's going to allow us to think in the wealth industry about aggregation in a different way. And we've managed aggregation with our clients, data aggregation through screen scraping and there's a few firms that manage it reasonably well. But going forward, I think all firms will have to think about this. And, for a client, they're going to want to know what their financial situation is. And their money will be in different institutions. So they're going to want to see that in one place. And that one place brings a big opportunity for someone to aggregate. And the risk, of course, is that that aggregator might be Apple or Google or or Amazon, and at that point, then the relationship between the firm and the client is intermediated by a major player. And what's interesting for young people, generally speaking, they have more brand trust and loyalty for brands like Apple and Amazon than they do for the banks that they deal with. So it's I think the short-term risk is not the thing that firms have to really worry about. It's what's going to happen over the next 10 years, and what's it going to mean for us as a financial institution in that period of time.
Right. Well,
Mm.
part of it again will come back to compliance and what even the aggregator is allowed to do. And because I mean, if they have all the data, which Google pretty much knows everything about me, if I'm being honest,
Yeah,
there
sure.
isn't much that they're missing. But again, like, are they going to be allowed to just package that data and ship it off to whoever they want, or will there be very strict regulations around it? Like I think about the GDPR regulations in Europe now,
Yeah.
and all the warnings that Google has to provide. So if anyone out there uses VPN and they decide to use a European server, they'll see that if they go to Google, there's this whole plethora of disclaimers that comes up.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, but again, the underlying principle behind GDPR and open banking in general is that you, as a client, own the data. It's your data.
Right.
So, if it's my data, I can share it with Google or Apple. It's up to me. And so, yes, they have to conform as well, and they have to prove that I've given them that access. But once they've proven that, then they can provide those services. So, yeah, no, I think it's an interesting time ahead of us, and we're going to see more and more financial services delivered through some of these institutions like Apple and Google and others, um, without them having to invest to build the underlying capabilities, right? Without them having to have major platforms that are OSFI compliant to do savings accounts or lending, for that matter.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Well, this has been a great chat.